Received. Thank you very much. I'm going to risk the BID policy before lunch. Okay. Ko papa here arohi whakapipi pakihi.
What does that mean?
It means the Council Business Improvement District Policy. I've been involved in one of those for years and I never actually had the opportunity to say those words or even had any idea it was something to do with it. But there you go. You learn something every day. Okay, please entertain us with something informative or otherwise. Well, and I will get someone else to really recommend this because I'm not that actually keen on it. So, anyone want to move this? Here we are, Fully and Dalton. I've got very strong arms this morning, those two. Thank them very much for that. Alistair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been introduced both as a risk and told to be entertaining and informative, so that's quite the challenge. You've got myself, Claire and Jill, who are the entire Auckland Council bid team with us today. I was going to take the report as read, but I think given what was said in public input this morning, I would just like to make some comments around the bit of the policy that relates to expansion processes of a business association. So at its simplest, a business association that's part of the bid program, we apply a targeted rate around a defined geographic area. Sometimes those business associations look to expand that area that is subject to the bid targeted rate. Now, Mr. Boddy raised concerns about the list of eligible voters that was compiled in the Onehunga Business Association expansion process. As he rightly pointed out, Auckland Council provides a database of all the commercial property owners within that area, and the onus is on the business association to go around and identify all the business owners within the area. In the Onehunga case, they started in 2022 doing that for a vote that took place in 2024. It just involves a lot of knocking on doors and getting around and actually meeting people. The combined property owners and businesses owners is then given to, in this case, Election Services Limited, who is an independent company that runs the ballot or vote amongst the eligible voters. And it is their responsibility under the bid policy to agree who is and isn't on that list of voters. I would say that, you know, the policy puts the onus on the business association to get out and make everyone aware of what's going on, requires them to do public consultation and public meetings, provide information. I would also note that the list of eligible voters has to be up for a month prior to voting so that members of the public can have a look to see whether they're on there, whether they're not, whether they should be. And in addition to that, in the case of Onehunga, that was consulted on as part of the LTP public consultation as well. The whole emphasis of the policy is to ensure as much as possible that those impacted by potentially striking a targeted rate are informed and get to have a say through the process. Will that always capture 100% of those eligible to vote? Probably not, but that is the intention behind it all. And the ballot, everybody in the proposed expansion area, whether they're a business owner or a property owner, is entitled to vote, and the outcome of that vote then just becomes another input into the decision of Auckland Council as to whether or not to increase the area subject to the targeted rate. Yeah, look, I don't want to labour the point, but that is what is within the current policy around expansions. That is the process they're expected to go through. We're not proposing that there are any changes to that part of the policy as part of this process, because we think that the policy is actually sound as it currently is. I know you were urged this morning not to approve changes to the policy. The areas we're proposing to change are different parts of the policy, and if you want us to relook at the expansion part of it, I'd suggest our recommendation is you accept the proposed changes that we've put forward today, and if you want us to do further work on that, you can ask us to do that, and we can go away and do that. It's not a hold everything up because you want us to look at that. Given I stand between you and your lunch, maybe I'll leave it there, but happy to take any questions.
Well, I've just got a question, just as a result of that quite good explanation there. Is it, because Mr. Body said it was commercial landlords and businesses, or is it just commercial landlords?
It's both. It is the commercial property owners and the businesses within them, because the commercial reality is the landlord will pass through the outgoings on a property through to the tenant via the lease. So in effect, the businesses of a commercial property end up paying the targeted rate, even though the property owner is officially the rate payer.
That's the tricky part.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have got businesses that are running out of homes, and you're going to collect those, and a lot of people have got businesses that are being well hidden. Can we connect with the inland revenue? And there's other people who are doing businesses which are entirely illegal, and he could probably find them and say, why didn't you find these guys? I mean, it's a bit tricky, really. And this guy's kind of unearthed, because there's always a grumpy person is a good way of testing what rules you've got, because this guy seems to be...
Far be it from me to say whether a grumpy person drives better performance, Your Honour, but I'll let you be the judge of that. But
I was thinking of Mr. Body, rather.
I didn't name you by name, Your Worship. No, I'm getting off track. Look, it is a tricky process, and I think Mr. Body himself said that this is new information, the number of business owners within that area. When decisions are made, you can only rely on the information you have at the time, and I would encourage Mr. Body to share the list of businesses with the Only Hunga Business Association so that they can contact all of those businesses going forward.
I mean, some of the claims that he made were about it being the only one that was mixed and all that sort of stuff. It's not nearly as mixed or complex as the two that I'm involved in, Otahu and Kaitaia, for a couple. So the other question is, did you get any feedback from the Small Business Advisory Board, who have some people of BIDs on it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we haven't. We've been asked repeatedly by Victoria to front up and see the Small Business Advisory Panel, and literally we have not been able to find a date between us, but we are, I believe, going on next. We meant to go last time, anyway, through.
Well, I'm quite busy and I made it last time, so it's not a very good answer.
We wanted to just reassure councillors, apart from the fact, Claire and I, this is our fourth policy, and fundamentally the policies have stayed the same over the length of time we've been involved. It is not unnormal to have a bid that's got a mixture of service elements in it. And we started to go through, just to give you a bit of a feel for this, since we started on here, 10 new bids established, 12 existing bids expanding their boundary areas. And then we started to think, these are the bids that we know of that are what we would call a retail, industrial, commercial mix. Business Manukau, Otahu, Wiri, Onehunga, Parnell, Uptown, and Silverdale and Business North Harbour. They all operate under a model of a mixture of businesses. So it's about the business association offering the right services to satisfy those business needs.
I agree with that, and so does Otahu, but well, I thought the question that you're requiring them to have auditors. Now, some of them have auditors and some of them don't. Otahu pays for an auditor, and it's just a bloody cost, really. We own nothing back from that. Papatoetoe had an auditor and for 2 years of having auditors and didn't discover that people were stealing from it. So an auditor is not a guarantee of anything going better. It's just another bloody cost. So I won't be supporting them demanding that. And it's the same thing with that, the Constitution. There's a country that hasn't got a Constitution, and we're forcing business associations to have constitutions that change regularly. Is that going to help?
Through
And
the
then,
chair, of course,
if I was looking for two things, I like bids. I want to get them to go better. I would ask, here's two that I'd recommend is, I'd require the local boards to report on their interaction with the bids.
Love it.
Because some local boards, and one who is a lady called Christine, who's on the local
Christine O'Brien.
council there, she does a great job. But there are other ones that I'm involved in that doesn't happen. And then so that I would like to require local boards to report on their interaction with bids. And the one I think performs the poorest a lot is the heart of the city. It would be best if they were all called, whatever the name is, business district. Because a lot of people think the heart of the city is a medical group.
Can I
We
have a
did some
go at
research.
answering some of those
What
queries?
is heart of the city? Oh, and something to do with keeping older councillors from having a heart attack. So there are a couple of things that I'm going to vote against having to have a constitution and having to have an auditor. It's up to them to have those. But I'd like to see some local boards report on the interaction of the BIDs.
Thanks for the feedback. Look, I would just point out that business associations are incorporated societies under the Incorporated Societies Act. It's not us that requires them to have a constitution. It is the Incorporated Societies Act, so that's not part of the policy. So we don't require that. In terms of requiring an audit, yes, agree, it's not going to be 100% fail-safe, but this is about risk mitigation for public funds. And our advice to you is requiring all bids to have an audit to try to improve their internal processes helps with that.
Everyone else have a crack. Now, Al Filipino.
Kia ora, Chair. Kia ora koutou to the team. First one, before 2022, when was the policy reviewed?
2016. I can even get the dates right. 2016.
For 2025, when will it be reviewed again?
We had some very good feedback from I think it was Hibiscus and Bay's local board, and they suggested that if we have a document that every bid, a relationship document with every bid that they do every 3 years, and Hibiscus and Bay suggested that it was timely if you were ever going to do another review, do it in that 3-year picture.
This next part is no, so it's not a slight on the current mayor or deputy mayor, because we don't know what's going to happen after the election, whether the mayor is he or she, and that applies to deputy mayor as well. But my question is, in regards to B and minor amendments and not holding this particular recommendation for the incoming council, what would you consider would be minor? And two, will that recommendation be holding to the incoming council, whoever the mayor and deputy mayor is going to be?
Minor amendments is we would consider nothing that substantively changes the meaning of the policy, but might just be typos or formatting or that sort of thing. And yes, it would carry over to the incoming mayor, deputy.
Last part, was there submissions and reading what we ended up getting? I didn't see it, but there was there in the reason why if a bid during the year gets everything done and dusted, the ability for the local board or a recommendation to come through to the governing body for whatever remaining monies there is for the end of the year to become a bid. or to get the rates. Has there been ever thought, because I think currently it gets set every year? Was there any ability, if they get themselves really constituted, meeting everything else, that if they did that in the first 4 or 5 months of the term, have the ability to get what rest of the monies is?
I think there's a couple of scenarios here. One, if we're establishing a new bid or expanding or whatever, we only strike the rates once a year, so we can only make that decision once whether to impose a targeted rate. The policy does allow, if a bid is non-complying with the policy, that we can withhold funding from the bid until they resolve their issues. In that scenario, yes, if they get their act back together during the year, then we can release the funds.
Kia ora, Chair.
Councillor Dalton, please.
Thank you very much. And Jill did answer my question. It was around how many bids do we have that are both retail and commercial, and that they do function really well. They can integrate. Of course, it is, I guess, sometimes down to the leadership. So I'll ask a different question. In terms of what the Mayor was saying about the local boards working with the bids, when I was a bid manager just before I was a bid manager, it was really clear that some bids just didn't want anything to do with the politicians. Has that evolved over the years, and do you see absolute benefit? Because I do. When I transitioned to local board chair, working with the business association was absolute leverage to both budgets in terms of delivering outcomes. So we're seeing a better engagement between boards and bids.
Excellent question. So in an annual cycle during a year, the bids are required to come before the local boards at least once per year. Some of our southern bids, they actually meet every quarter, which is great interaction. So there is a formal requirement in the policy to meet once a year. I think it has moved on. I think it has evolved. There's certainly not an us and them anymore. They do always see local boards as as a funding source, so there's always a reason to be friendly. But I think the relationship has improved. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much. And I support the changes you've made to the policy, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bartley, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your work with the OBA situation. I have some questions from the local board chair, Maria Meredith, if that's okay. She just wanted to know, does the bid team only work directly with the business association chair or the manager, or both?
Another good question. Predominantly we would work. So within each bid there's a governance committee, an executive committee, and a manager or coordinator. We do actually probably, I'd say on thinking about it, we probably work more with the managers or the coordinators, but we are trying to focus on the relationship with the governance body, because it's the governance body and the local board that's the important relationship.
Thank you. And for the bid policy, based on this particular situation, does the bid team have any suggestions of how things may have been done differently leading up to the SGM? And then also, what will the bid team do differently as part of their practices and engagement with business associations in the future?
So we want to reassure everybody here that we've been, first of all, working with Mr. Body since last August, and we have responded, obviously, as council officers and through our manager to all the legoimas, and every bit of information has been shared with the customer. And what we also do is have very clear roles within the policy about what's the role of Auckland Council, what's the role of the OBA, what's the role of the local board. So we've had to try and make sure that people understood what their roles were and stick to their swimming lane, if that's the right word. Unfortunately, a lot of the situation did come back to the role of the OBA. The policy sets a framework for people to interpret and use, and the OBA was the one that was at the coalface actually dealing with their governance and their management response to some of that framework. Claire, would you like to add anything?
Just to add is, we do reach out and form relationships with the business association chairs. And in Oni Hunger's case, we've actually almost been speaking with him daily and just offering support, but also offering guidance when we can.
Thank you. And then my question, please. So we just are going through this annual plan. We've gone through the annual plan, and there was no public feedback on the bid rates, right? None that came through regarding the OBA rate. So which takes precedence, our annual plan process or the bid policy that enabled that SGM to have that
Going to
decision?
put a third friend in the pot here, and that's the bid's own constitution. Yeah, the
Can
bid's
I-
constitution.
I think what I'd say is bids are membership organisations, and we're driven very much by what the members of this association, normally through their annual general meeting, they agree their work programme and the budget to match that. And that's what informs the request to Auckland Council for the amount of the bid targeted rate each year. In this specific case, yes, we did consult through the annual plan process, but subsequent to that, after that, and there was a timing issue here, the Business Association held a special general meeting where they did, as Mr. Boddy pointed out, get a large turnout which voted overwhelmingly for a different amount of the targeted rate. So in that case, you know, that was the information, the most recent information we had to go on as to what that business association was looking for from Auckland Council.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor Simpson.
Thanks. Do you get a copy of all the bids AGM papers?
Through the chair, yes, we do. What we get every year is the whole suite of documents that are presented at every single bid's AGMs and then approved. We get them after they've been approved by the members. So their agendas, their business plans, their budgets for the upcoming year, their reports from the manager, the reports from the treasurer, we get the whole kit and caboodle.
That's good. The reason I ask that is, do you then have a look at that paperwork and maybe, from your professional opinion, look to highlight any maybe concerns you may have, and if you do, how are they followed up?
Yes, we do. We go through them very thoroughly, and we're quite greedy because we're focused on what we're looking for. We go through that paperwork. We ask for additional documents or things that we think are not kosher or things that are missing. And then the result of that process of reviewing them is a compliance report that goes to each of the local boards, all 19 local boards that have a bids, get a report saying effectively, we have reviewed the documents, we find your bid compliant. We might make some comments and say, you know, such and such bid didn't produce a treasurer's report, or, you know, we might make some comments like that if there's a situation, and then it's the document that goes annually before the local board for their decision making, and their decision is to recommend to the governing body that the bid receive the next year's targeted rates.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jill, and thank you, Claire. It's been my experience when things go off the rails a bit and we have a problem, from what I've experienced, it's often because of a failure to communicate in a timely way. And I just wondered, Alistair, if you could comment on that, whether the information given me, I had problems with Dominion Road Business Association and the most recent experience that we've had, whether we could have improved our communication at a senior level.
I think the instance you're referring to there, Councillor, I was a bit tardy in responding to the chair of that business association, for which I apologise. Communication is key in all of these things, as are relationships. And if I look back over my years involved in the bid program, most of the issues that arise relate to some breakdown in a relationship between bid managers, staff, executive committee, local board members, or a member of the business association itself, and that's generally when we get pulled in to help mediate relationship issues in many cases. And we do get pulled in many different directions there, but timely communication there does help, and unfortunately I dropped the ball on that occasion.
Thank you for that. My second question is to you, Your Worship. In looking at whether we adopt this or not today, I have a real problem in that you have been consistent in your criticism of Heart of the City, and it suggests to me that you may have some predetermination when it comes to work around the Heart of the City, and I wondered whether you would incorporate, along with yourself and the Deputy Mayor, the Chair of the Budget Committee, to be there, because these will become binding on an incoming council, and it's just important that there is a measure of objectivity, even though we're not talking about major amendments, we're talking about minor amendments, but it's just the consistency with which the criticism has been labelled at Heart of the City that leaves me with a measure of discomfort. So I just wondered whether you would agree to put in Greg Sayers along with yourself and the Deputy Mayor to ensure that there is some further balance on approvals.
Well, you've accused me of being consistent. And that's I'm very pleased about that. It's an accusation I couldn't actually throw at everybody around the council here. And I remain consistent. But if you wanted to have Greg Sayers in there to check on my consistency, but I do think it would be good if they were called the Lower Queen Street Business Association, which would remove a lot of the need for my consistency.
Thank you for your gracious acceptance, but I guess it's Councillor Foley and Councillor Dalton that will have to approve the inclusion of the Chair of the Budget Committee, given that they moved and seconded the motion.
I'm sure they would. Right, yeah.
No big deal from our perspective.
If they're agreeing that, we can add in there if you like. Now, Councillor Sayers, this is your time. Okay, give us the benefit of what's happening in Wellsford.
All right, mate. If it's helpful for the two councillors who've moved it, look, and listening to the comments, I'm happy to be nominated if it's helpful. Right, where was I? Alistair. Right. I think one of the points Mr. Boddy was making, that the rules said that it had to be all businesses. He kind of emphasised that, and you've kind of explained why we can end up with a gap between what's the businesses that are be able to be contacted and whose responsibility that is versus what the reality might be. So could you just give some level of comfort in terms of perhaps what that definition all businesses is? Because as a layperson, you think it might mean all businesses, right? Like everybody. So.
All businesses, I mean, I don't want to overcomplicate it. It's almost as simple as it sounds. So that encapsulates sole traders, partnerships, companies, whoever is operating a business from within the geographic area. And that does make it difficult to identify absolutely every business, because in a single premise, you can have several businesses operating, even sort of rent-a-desk type arrangements where businesses might come and go. So what we're really after here is the absolute best endeavours from the Business Association to get all of the businesses, so everybody can have a say. There are other mechanisms for people to have their say. you know, I mentioned that we consult on this through annual plans and LTPs, and the formal vote or ballot process involved here, you know, that's another piece of information that goes into the decision making.
I think that's helpful. So is there anywhere referenced within the policy that we're about to kind of look at now and vote on that best endeavours is kind of the expectation or some wording along those lines?
Yes, through you, the chair, yes. We ask the bid to do, as good as job and as best they can to record those either trading or operating a business from within that area.
That's in writing somewhere, is it?
Yeah.
Right. And Alison, when you first kicked off, you talked, I don't know if you're trying to give us a lead or not, so I just want to clarify with you about how you don't have to stop this process today, but if as a group we wanted to do a little bit more work or background digging, or I just want to clarify what you're kind of perhaps suggesting to us, and if that was some sort of helpful suggestion.
All my suggestions are helpful, Councillor. What I was indicating there was you received somebody from the public today asking you not to approve this because they had concerns about an expansion process. What I'm saying to you is we're not proposing any changes to the part of the policy that deals with that process. So if you collectively have concerns about how those processes are run from a policy perspective, approving the policy today won't change the status quo, and that you can ask us to go do further work on that and come back and potentially amend the policy further if you want. Doing what Mr. Body suggested and not approving the policy would actually leave it as it currently is, which he seems to object to, and not make the other improvements that we're recommending.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I should have been a little bit more clear, but that was helpful, as always. But were you suggesting, or could a way of making that work happen would be probably via resolution, or would that work that you go away and potentially just do off your own bat without us having to put a C up here?
In regards to that, the governing body received a petition last week from Mr. Body calling for an independent review of this matter. I also know that since then he's contacted the Ombudsman and asked the Ombudsman to look into this matter. We've received a request for information from the Ombudsman. So I don't think you need to put up a resolution requiring further work. We're looking at the expansion process, and Onehunga is already going on.
Councillor Foley, please.
Oh, sorry, Chair. I was indicating that I'd like to speak during the comments part, not questions, but thank you.
I'm having difficulty separating those, but Councillor Lee, please.
I'll reserve my right to speak, not at question time in the debate. Thank you.
Okay, on that basis, you guys can retire. Councillor Bartley's got one more question.
Maybe not for the bid team, maybe for Phil. I just had a question around the practice that this may set regarding the change to B around predetermination, because we all make comments about other organisations. Does that mean we're going to be, told that we can't be involved in some decision making on it because of potential predetermination?
Very good question. In fact, if that is the case, then we'll have to be silent through the whole day. And that'd be a great leap forward, wouldn't it? I don't think... Same, me too. It's like voting continuously against extending the meetings, but Phil, have a go.
Yeah, no, we're a long way from establishing a precedent here that would disqualify people from speaking or being involved, is my judgment. The more complex answer about conflicts of interest and how they're managed, but you know, we're dealing with a policy matter here. We're not dealing with a decision around the actual rate or anything, for one thing. And in any event, the bar is reasonably high. So no problematic precedent in my view.
Angela Dalton, please.
Sorry to prolong it, but it is just a question around conflict. So the Mayor has said that he's on many bids. So is there an issue with conflict with him signing off or even being involved in the vote? Just point of clarification.
Is being on a BID a conflict, or is it a qualification? This goes back to when I was many years ago. I was on the board of TVNZ, and this came up because I owned one half of one station on Sky, who had 86 stations, and TVNZ had 2 stations, but they were very big ones, you see. And it was considered that my half of an 86th of Sky was a conflict. And so, and I thought, I agree, I'm going to get off so that you can have a board which has no conflicts and no knowledge or experience of television. And we know what's happened to TV. That worked well. So if you feel that I'm too conflicted by actually being on one, I'm happy to get off.
I'm just protecting you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much.
Could come back to haunt you.
But
it's ultimately for the individual, the Mayor in this case, to decide. I would observe that you've got 2 other members as a check and a balance, and there's a utility in people actually having experience with bids. You know, so cuts
and I'm only on one of 40 bids, not the whole lot of them. But there we are. Thank you for those questions. Thank you for saving me from the humility of... If you two retire now, I'm sure that Councillors Foley and Lee, who are the next 2 to debate this, will pour vision and clarity on this. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Councillor Foley.
Kia ora, thanks, Your Worship, and thanks, team. I've had a lot of experience with our bid team over the years when I was a member of the Otara Papatoi Local Board and working through the issues with some of our bids. Most of our bids are great, like Business Manukau, Getba and Wiri, but some of our smaller bids needed a lot of help, and as we all saw yesterday, a couple of those bids have ended up having no rate struck. And so I do want to commend the team for their hard work. They do go above and beyond. They've worked, you know, we heard today that they've been working alongside one of the bids, Mr. Bodie, and the bid in Onehunga on a daily basis, just about. And I've certainly observed that in my own ward. So I commend the team for their hard work and their efforts across the board. It's not an easy job. And I really support the changes that they are proposing, because I think a lot of those changes would have been really helpful, for example, for Hunter's Corner and for the Manukau Mangere East bid if they were there before, because what it does, it just makes the policy a little bit more watertight. It gives our officers the ability to see those red flags earlier on. It gives some way to mitigate risk. You can never eliminate risk 100%, but, you know, like the officers were saying, this is about risk mitigation. So I support those changes being suggested by the team 100%. And then just lastly, I wanted to say in terms of the compliance reports as well and the red flags, I know that they do that because that's been my experience. They've poured through those documents that bids send through, and when they see the red flags, they bring that up with the local boards first, and then they work through that process. And unfortunately, sometimes we get to this point like we have with Hunter's Corner, for example, in Mangere East. So, yeah, absolutely supportive. Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, team.
Yep, very good. Thank you. Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I start, I want to put on record my objection to the string of comments you made about Heart of the City. They're meant to demean people, but they turn out to be demeaning of yourself and the office you hold. In regard to bids and this particular report, I want to thank the officers and commend them for the report. It's very informative. In regard to business improvement districts, bids, as organisations, I recognise that many of them do very valuable work indeed, especially the ones in my ward, particularly Heart of the City. Put that on record. However, bids are an unusual beast. They form a kind of a bureaucracy, a semi-bureaucracy, many of them occupying a grey area between local government, local boards, and the private sector. Now, that has some positive aspects, but I think it also has some negative ones. Not all of them are mentioned in the report. One of the real concerns I find in some examples I've seen in the past, when it comes to a controversial development or disruption in a bid area, the manager, the chief executive, tends to get into a conflict situation where they come under pressure from, in essence, their employer, the funder, the council, and the small business people they're meant to represent. The report also talks about other negative aspects. I think the option one is a step in the right direction. However, given the length and the importance of the item, and indeed the breaking controversy about what happened in Onehunga, I think the option at this stage, taking on board the concerns of many of the bids, which may actually be reasonable, I think it's underdone, and we should be workshopping this ourselves before we make a final decision. As it stands now, for a number of reasons, including what we heard from the Onehunga business people this morning, more work needs to be done, more thought needs to be given, and the concerns expressed even by the bids who want no change at all has to be given further consideration if we're doing our job properly. Pushing this through right now, I think, would be a mistake. More work needs to be done on this before we can complete the changes that might be needed to our bid system. So I can't support option one. I recognise it's a step in the right direction, but the work is underdone. It needs more input, needs more discussion from the members of this council. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dalton, please.
Thank you very much. And again, thanks to the team for the work they've done on this, and to our bids who do a really great job. Now, this policy has been out to all the bids. It's been out to all the local boards. The politicians have had their say, and the bids have had their say. I know that 2 of my bids have fed back on this policy, and as a result, changes were made. It's good to go. It's ready to go. And it fills a gap. It fills a gap that has affected poorly Councillor Fully's and Filipina's areas, and it makes things more secure for us as a council, safer for the ratepayer. So support the bid policy going through, and thank the team for all of the many phone calls and meetings that they've had to get this to the place that it is today. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to put the thing. Anyway, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, carried. Thank you very much. We'll resume at 1:45. Good.
Yes, I have.
Is it a 1:45? Will be half an hour? Bloody hell.
Yeah, 1:45.
1:45.